everybody has gone through something that is now triggering them in the situation they're in and not giving them the capability to handle it as well as they would if they haven't gone through it.
Welcome to the Elite Few podcast, where we explore the fabulous, extraordinary world of the people who move the needle of success. Join our host Tiffany and producer Kyle as we dive into the stories and insights of the elite few who are making a difference and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Let's get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Elite Few podcast, where we interview people that are elite few in their world, and what they do stands for fabulous, extraordinary world, and what they do to move the needle of success in their world, and how they help people and how they help themselves. Once again, my illustrious host, Tiffany Feeney, is in the house, literally in the same. She's right behind that wall right there. She's in the same house. She's here in Columbus, Ohio, for the weekend for a birthday party for a loved one of hers. And she came into the studio, to the Goodnight Studio, the Goodnight Voiceover Studios, to record some episodes. And we've got a guest today that I think is going to blow your mind. I'm going to have Tiffany introduce her and what we're going to be talking about. But don't forget to like, share, and if once you hear this message, if you have anybody that you know that needs to hear this message, don't forget to share it with them and make sure that they hear it too, and subscribe and be part of the Elite Few ecosystem that we're building here on YouTube, all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of them. Main one's YouTube. We love being on YouTube. We've gone live once on YouTube. We're going to be doing that more. It's going to be super exciting. But Tiffany, go ahead and say hi to everybody. It's been a while since you've been to Columbus. So say hi and then introduce our guest, and we'll keep on going.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. As always, I love having you here and part of what we're going to be doing. We are talking with Bobbie Zimmerman, and she is a certified, I want to get it right, so I'm going to look, certified brain health coach. And I'm very excited to have her on. We've been talking about trauma a lot in different areas and the way we're actually all dealing with different traumas. And I'm very excited to have her here. She's also the one that's going to be talking with us about the ACEs test. So we're gearing up. Let's get going.
Hi, my name is Bobbie Zimmerman, and I study brain health and anything to do with childhood trauma or behavioral issues, and anything to do with psychology and mindset, and anything that can help people be self-empowered to overcome some of the challenges we have. And in that, I've studied generational trauma and epigenetics, and how when we go through certain traumas, we change our genetic code, not so much our DNA, but the way that our DNA code is written. And those can pass on to our children through our DNA and our children's children. When I'd gone through a lot
and
of...
that's science, right? That's actually proven science. That's proven, not just some hubbub
No, they
process.
can actually see the genetic coding has changed when someone's experienced trauma. So say if somebody experiences a lot of trauma and they don't do any of the work to help themselves get better, that genetic code stays in the gene, and we pass it down to our children. And so when they go to experience a trauma that's around them, they can have a trigger that didn't even have to do with anything that they've experienced yet, because they have a certain traumatic response written within their DNA code. So they may seem overreactive to something that we think, oh gosh, they're overreacting, or why are they being so melodramatic? But sometimes we may not even understand that we have a certain response to something that we don't know about, and it regulates the way that we respond. So
basically they're picking up our responses. They're picking up our insecurities or our responses because we haven't dealt with them. And I have definitely seen what you're saying. And I didn't mean to interrupt there, but Demi Moore discusses that. Her daughter, who had not gone through her issues with, being raped. And I think we all heard about her story with her mom giving her to somebody when she was 14 for $500 to have for a night. And her daughter took on the insecurities and self-identity issues that she had dealt with because she watched her mom go through it. So I've seen those same things happen with with lots of kids I've worked with. I had mentioned this before in the show that I worked at school for kids that had problem issues in their life, especially this one particular school, and they all had been through traumatic situations, and some of them had been led into them not because something had happened to them when they were little, but something had happened to their mom. And I, like you just said, it's kind of like it pushes them towards those same traumas, right?
Yeah, especially with the mother, because so say your mother goes through something when she's growing up. She then has a heightened response. Her cortisol levels are higher. Her genetic code's being changed to have a different response system. That stays with her. And then she already has all of her eggs in her. So all of her eggs now have been rewritten. So when she conceives you and she's going through her own traumas, you're doubly affected now. So then you're born now, you have even higher responses to certain traumas. As you start to perceive the world around you, you already have that sensitive response in you. And then you see something else happened, and now you're triply affected. Your children are also, all of your eggs are inside of you when you're conceived. So all the eggs you ever have are always with you. So all of your eggs are already written with that DNA code. So every child has that. So, and as they go through their traumas, they impact more their DNA code. And they have more of that trauma response.
So is it harder for a male to have generational trauma because we don't have
yes, because
built like a woman.
Right.
Because
you
our
keep
sperm
replicating.
is generated. Right.
Yes. So it doesn't stay with you the same as it does a woman, but as you go through life and you experience trauma, you can pass it on as you're going through it. Yes. It's just not the same.
But he gets his mom's trauma. So Kyle, even though he's a man, he did get his mother's trauma issues that he now had to react to in his own response.
Yes, and as his things change, his semen gets produced as he's going through life at different times. Different things will be passed on. Yes.
Okay, so as a man, he can heal and then have kids and not pass on those
So can trauma. We can too. So.
We can't, but I'm saying for future, if you're worried about your children.
Yes, and same with us.
Yeah. Okay.
We can all rewrite our genetic code. So that would, if we've already had children, they already have carried that, but we can help them learn how to heal that. But if they haven't, and we start doing the internal work and start, focusing on, say, gratitude, like it's been proven that if you focus on gratitude and love and joy for 10 minutes a day, just 3 times a day, it was proven to increase the genetic code by 49% within just 4 days. Being
Joe Dispenza talks
raising
about
the
that
immune
on a
system as well
basis.
too.
Yeah,
the IgA. Which is
I love that. I
response.
just went through that.
Yeah.
I actually just was telling somebody with cancer all about that gratitude healing. For every issue.
Right. So another person who's really good at discussing and going over things in a way that somebody wouldn't think, these are they're scientifically proven now, but they're kind of non-traditional, something that people might think is kind of woo-woo out there, is Joe Dispenza. He talks about...
That's what I was just saying. Yes. I watch him all the time. Love Joe Dispenza.
His mindfulness and things like that. So on his workshops, he can have somebody go in and they run the genetic, do the blood work before, and then within those 4 days, they do it again. And just that 4-day workshop, they've had amazing results. And they've rewritten 9 specific codes just in those workshops alone. But these are things people can do on their own. They don't have to go to Joe Dispenza's workshop, or there's just so much they can read. Gosh, The Body Keeps the Score. I should have it with me right now, but I don't. Is a phenomenal book.
I've been reading it. I introduced it to Tiffany.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal book.
And I heard about it. I heard about it before. It's a great book.
Yes, it is.
And we'll put a link to it in the so much.
Yes, Vander-Kolk, I think is his name.
But it is a heavy book.
Yes, it is.
Exactly. And it's a very, very heavy book. I was listening to it while I was painting one day, actually over a couple of days. I just put it in my AirPods and started listening to it. And there was times when I was like, okay, well, all right, I need to just shut this off for about an hour and just
Right.
like, because then it brings up things that are scientific and the history of, I mean, he's telling us stories about how they're not getting it right. And it's like 2014, right?
I know.
Like,
I know.
Oh, and back in this blah, blah, blah happened in 2014 or 2015. Or like, wait, what? We didn't figure that out until 2014, and the brain scans and they can see different things. And I'm telling you, it's a phenomenal book, but it's one of those books that comes with an asterisk for me. If you have previous trauma that you may or may not even know about, you better understand that book may trigger something in you that you may need to go get help after you read it.
Yes, so somebody who does pick it up should be, because they're trying to work on that. And I know we're jumping all over the place, but something so say somebody wants to address just the problems they may have in areas they may not even know about. They did develop this ACE score. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. So you can go through and answer within 10 questions different things that you've experienced through your childhood, because as we're speaking of, that changes our trauma response and the way that we see the world, the way that we filter things, the way we attract things to ourselves, the unhealthy boundaries I didn't even know what a boundary was until I was like 48. I read the book Boundaries by Dr. John Townsend, changed my life. I grew up in a abusive home of every kind. I tried to be happy and positive, but I grew up and married a man I didn't realize had severe mental health issues. And it ended up, he was very, very violent. And it was like what you see on TV. We escaped with our lives, me and my baby, and we had to live in hiding for over 10 years. So there was things that I didn't know I could have. Yes. That's awful. Didn't let anybody know where I was. It was very hard.
I have to ask you, Bobbie, I'm going to ask you what everyone has asked me. And I really do need the answer because they've made movies about people who did this. You've seen them all. Kyle might not even know what I'm talking about, but what made you leave and not just kill him and be done with it?
I don't have a violent bone in my body, but even though I used to be able to fight, he caught me and mentally handicapped me in a way of manipulation. Yes. When they get you in a psychological state where they actually disable you, I was completely numb. And it started mildly. I knew something was wrong. I'd never experienced mental illness before. But if I had any type of resistance to stand up against what he was doing, he just kicked it up a notch. He just raised his thing to make sure his thumb stayed on me. And I just, I'm talking extremely violent, near death stuff. And it wasn't fun. So, but I didn't know anything about mental illness. I didn't know anything about healthy relationships or what boundaries were. I knew what it should be, but I didn't recognize, things that I could have done to have helped myself. So I had gone through that, escaped with my life, lived in hiding, kind of done some self-help stuff. Then entered another marriage that didn't go well for ways I won't get into. And then also I started studying more. And then I had found Dr. Daniel Amen. He had wrote a book called Feel Better Fast to Make It Last. Well, that book changed my life. It talked about not mental health, but brain health, and explaining that brain health is mental health, and that the effects of how our brain functions affects decisions we make, our behaviors, how they work. And that's how I found the ACE test. And I entered a contest he had. It was a national challenge for mental health. And I actually ended up winning that. And it came with won the national prize. It came with a prize of $5,000. So I invested that money in learning to brain health through him. And having my SPECT scan done and figure out the function of my brain. And one of the doctors there had recommended with me, my PTSD, that I would read Their Body Keeps the Score. So, but I've read many books, like over 30 books on these types of subjects. But that one is just a really good overall description of how trauma can change the way we see things, how we respond, and how our body changes genetically, and our psychology and everything, that our physiology, everything changes when we've been through a lot of trauma. And so learning how to help ourselves, which is also helping our future generations, is so important, because we're going to give them the tools we didn't have to respond to the world in a healthier way, and to understand when they do experience a trauma, how they can help themselves go through it in a healthy way without letting it get to without rewriting their genetic code.
Well, and when we say that overall arching word trauma, and I know that you spoke of the horrors that you dealt with as a kid and as a young wife with a first husband, and I want to make sure that people know that it's not just all about abuse and sexual abuse or incest and stuff like that. Yeah. There's other traumas that can be.
Yes, exactly.
And I'll just share my quick story about, I don't know what my parents brought to me. I'm not sure. It could be part of it, but I don't know. But I do know that when I was a Boy Scout age, what's that, like 11 or 12, I watched a fellow Boy Scout have a CO issue from his home and became mentally disabled. The day before, he had the whole house. I don't think anybody died from it, but they had a carbon monoxide poisoning situation for the whole house. And this young boy became severely affected from it. Well, I remember seeing him, of course, pre that happening. He's the life of the party, and not party as a 11-year-old, but you know what I mean. He was the class clown of the Boy Scout group, and just super super active and everything, and witty and fun. And then he became completely mentally disabled, to the point where drool, couldn't operate his hands, just very very bad, right? Well, fast forward to my career as a paramedic, and I go on a severe carbon monoxide poisoning run. I've been on a few of them and dealt with people in the hospital setting too that have come in with carbon monoxide poisoning. But I was actually one of the first responders on scene for an entire family that had passed away from carbon monoxide. Well, then fast forward a month after that happened, our whole township had a carbon monoxide issue because the whole township power went out with no storm, some sort of electrical issue that made the whole power go out, no wind. So we had, I think, no less than 9 carbon monoxide poisoning or carbon monoxide calls, right? And one of those calls was 4 children. We had to rush to the hospital and put them into the hyperbaric chambers and get them to feel better. So I didn't do well after that. It wasn't until about a couple of months ago that I linked up the issue I had when I was a kid about my friend who was in Boy Scouts with me, and figured out that, wait a second, I have this PTSI, this post-traumatic stress incident or injury. I don't want to call it a disorder for me, because I've gone to help and I've got some mental things that I can do. And, and it's one of those things where I'm like, it made so much sense after reading that book that it's like, that's why it triggered me. I've dealt with death and destruction my entire life in EMS and in the hospital setting. I've seen some crazy bad stuff, right? I've been there trying to help someone. I've been there on the other side of it when they've already checked out of the world and they've done severe things to hurt themselves, and I'm there to try to fix them, and I just can't because they're already gone. Those are the kind of things I see, but that doesn't mess with me. But the carbon monoxide poisoning did, right? So
right, because you witnessed it as a
so
child.
Much sense. And it makes so much sense that it stretched all the way back to my childhood. And that's one thing about first responders is the folks that are first responders that have PTSD or PTSI or having some mental issues or having some struggles with their career. It could be not just what they see. That could be the catalyst of it, but it could be something. What I don't think a lot of us know, when I say us, I mean first responders, it may be something that we dealt with before we even knew we were going to be a first responder, like me,
Exactly. Yeah, trauma can be anything that alters the way that you see the world in a safety, view, or what the world means to you now. Do you feel threatened or scared or not insecure, or just, anything that changes the way that we see the world and our place in it. So there's many things.
Well,
so out of those, sorry, go ahead.
No, Kyle did have he watched somebody overdose as a child. I think that
I did. Yep.
definitely does
family
affect
member,
him
right?
a lot. I feel like
haven't done a drug alcohol, but no hard drugs.
No, I mean, and I feel like some of those things are we all have our different issues, but everybody has gone through something that is now triggering them in the situation they're in and not giving them the capability to handle it as well as they would if they haven't gone through it. Like what you just said.
Right.
And I think some people want to believe I didn't have trauma. Okay, you something happened to you at some point where you're going to need to get help and you're going to need to fix it. You might not even remember what it is.
Well, a lot of people like 9/11. That's a trauma. If I mean, they speak of it in that book. A little boy who saw the people falling out of the building drew a picture the next day and they didn't know what this black circle was at the bottom of the picture, and come to find out, he's like, well, that's a trampoline because the people that are falling, I want them to be able to save them. So he was 5 years old. That is a trauma, so people that even, space shuttle, we were in middle school when the space shuttle hit, right, Tiff?
And, we watched it.
That was a traumatic situation because we had a teacher on the space shuttle. We were all watching it. That was the first time that we ever shut off. Like, everybody was watching the space shuttle launch that day because the first teacher was going into space. That was a trauma. So trauma is everywhere. It's just, what does it do later on in life if you get triggers or something, right? So
I just think that people have kind of stigmatized the word. So they kind of feel like it's overused. And they've also stigmatized mental health, So that's why raising awareness for people is so important, because if they can just kind of see, okay, I may not want to overlabel myself, but what are some of the things I may have been experienced, and that have changed the way I view the world, or the way I react to my surroundings, or the way I engage with people. And then to at least be aware of that, so they know how to address it and how to be healthier and how to be able to help their children, if they have children already, to be able to respond in a healthier way. Right. And to
how do you feel about hypnotherapy?
I think it's amazing, especially if people haven't had especially if people haven't had the results through you really, really have to keep an open mind on some of these things. A lot of people have a hard time with it, but the more open you are to it, the more effective it can be. But so if someone isn't finding the results on their own, hypnotherapy is amazing, because it gets us in the subconscious levels, which is how our body functions. So, like, depending on how deep you want to go with this, you have your conscious and your subconscious. So if in our conscious mind you can't address these things and help yourself, you have to do it to the subconscious level. And if you can't do that on your own because you're holding on to it, there's some resistance somewhere, hypnotherapy is amazing for that.
So I actually believe, and Kyle knows how strongly I feel about it, we had a show on hypnotherapy. We're actually going to have my hypnotherapist on, and he's going to talk about some stuff too. And I am a strong believer that everyone should do the first 6 sessions, the ones that deal with childhood, anything, because it starts in utero and it starts 0 to 5. I don't know how many people have told me that situation can't affect me. I have no way to remember it. That's not how it works, sweet cheeks. Here's the problem. It's all affecting you. What happened when you were in utero affected you. And unfortunately, major arguments that went on in utero that you don't remember that were happening about you are affecting you. And I definitely feel everyone needs to do it. It changes the it's not just your subconscious mind. It actually helps erase some of your limiting beliefs and realign where you are psychologically with yourself. And
Yes.
people aren't aware, like, start there. I just literally had this conversation with somebody, and they were dealing with anger management. They've been in therapy for years. And I said, I'm not saying don't go to therapy. What I'm saying is do this. And my hypnotherapist said, I quit doing all mental health therapy after this. He goes, because why do I need to sit with someone for 3 years and have them chuck out their childhood when all I have to do is sit here in 6 sessions and a snap, it's done. It is done.
Yeah, because our first 7 years of childhood, we're in the brain waves of just watching. That's where our programming starts. That's how our processes start. So whether we remember it or not doesn't matter. How we view the world and how we respond to the world and how we engage in it is learned that first 7 years. So and that's what we carry on.
People don't understand verbal abuse. All they think about is the only real trauma you can have is sexual abuse or having a drug addict parent. I didn't go through that. No, wrong. Verbal abuse, manipulation, psychological abuse, religious abuse, neglect, even having a caretaker not support you at a time they're supposed to support you
is abuse. Right.
It's
anything that makes you feel unsafe.
It causes your brain to rewire and go, I now at 3 years old have to protect myself,
fight or flight,
because my caregiver isn't. Now, I realize we've educated society way more than they were in the 90s and the 80s and last century. So now we ended up with helicopter parents, but people take that word too far too. I mean, they do. They've just taken it out of me being involved as a parent doesn't make me helicopter. So back yourself up, sweet cheeks, because I'm not doing it. And we've had major problems with Boy Scouts when my son was in it, because they're like, we want you involved, but not too involved. No, you don't get to pick that. I will tell you, I really, really believe that everything, I don't know if Kyle had mentioned to you that I did guardian ad litem work for the foster care system. So I think the biggest thing I ran into was, and we're actually interviewing a lawyer tomorrow, dealing with criminal and activities with abuse. And it's amazing to me the amount of children that go through neglect, psychological and abandonment, as well as, I mean, I could just list the name of things, as you know, Bobbie, that these children go through. And the court system, DCF, doesn't handle it at all. They don't assign these kids that you must be seeing a psychiatrist, you must be seeing a psychologist. They don't put them on any mental health therapies, knowing that they had been not always sexually abused, but in a home with a violent parent. And any amount, I don't care if it's one time, which this does bother me when people say this. Well, it was just one situation where I was sexually abused. No, stop. You need to get healed, because you're passing that on. It's a limiting belief inside you all the time, even though you don't think it is. Well, I've actually dealt with it. You haven't. You have these limiting beliefs holding you back. And when you see people not being successful, it is 100%, unfortunately, their fault. Was it their fault what happened to them? No. But is it your fault for not getting healed? Yes. Because you must make the choices. Bobbie, where would you be if you hadn't made those choices and forced yourself to get healing?
I would still be lost and feel powerless and hopeless. My children and my grandchildren would be, I wouldn't have hope for them, and I wouldn't know how to help them, or just everybody. Like, there's so much in, even like, you saying the different types of trauma, even, religious trauma, and how that can be used to manipulate people and to put them in a state of fear and a state of control. I have experienced that myself. And there's so much we can do to help people, to deal with these things and to help themselves. And like you said too, with the children, them not giving them the help they need. They always see it as a behavioral thing, put them on medicine. Well, if they were to address in a healthy way, and this stuff has been out for a while, just like Kyle said, 2014 was actually before that. I think it was like epigenetics has been out since like 1990 something. 1 or 2. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this has been out that long. Why wasn't it in my science books in school? I'm starting to get mad as I'm finding out. I'm like, oh wait, I graduated in 90. That's why it wasn't in there. So I was going to ask my kids, was it your science book? Because epigenetics has been out.
No.
Why don't they educate us on these things? Because that's where the key is. The key is to understanding the way that we respond. We don't even know, but if we can get control of these things and be able to help ourselves and help others, it's a game changer. It changes lives for sure.
Yeah.
I really feel very strongly that people believe they are past it. Like, I've moved on from those terrible situations. I don't think about them. They don't affect me. Yes. And they truly believe it. I'm actually functioning very well. Well, I think I just said this the other day on a Instagram clip. If you're still allowing your abuser to affect you, impact you, and have input in your life, you have not moved on from it, because you haven't even been able to stand up to the abuser. And I see it all the time where people have a parent. Why is that person speaking to you? Why is that person speaking to you? They have no right to be talking to you. They have no right to give you input on your life at all. And I've dealt with my mom on that on many occasions, and actually said that to her. This is before hypnotherapy. I've said, you do not have a right to have an input on my life. You are part of the problem. So you don't get that. I do believe the reason we talked about me standing up to my ex during the marriage is because I had learned to stand up to my mother and not care how she felt about it. I don't owe her that. It's not my problem. But you were allowed to set boundaries, like you said, and I would do that. But I still didn't get the healing I needed until I went to the hypnotherapy sessions. Yeah.
When you stood up to your mom, would there have been, was there consequences for that?
Oh yeah. My dad was always pissed. Always. Like, we're not dealing with this. And then it took me a while. Oh God, my sister, well, there's 5 of us. And so my sister and I would back each other. Our trauma bonds as kids, we would back each other, right? And so at one point, she came up with it, and I just started saying it to him too, is you don't want her to be upset. You don't want her to leave crying. You don't want to deal with it. It's not our responsibility for her not to be upset with her actions of the past. That's not our problem. And the reality is, it's not. I'm really sorry that your parent is upset that you're standing up and putting boundaries on because of their past abuse. And I'm sorry that they're not willing to accept it.
Most people who have abused are upset by boundaries. That's the number one sign. If you set a boundary and somebody's upset, you know that they want to violate it, and they're mad that they can't anymore.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You're not even close to wrong. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the first time I met Bobbie, and we talked deeply about some stuff that she's helping me with, and she has helped me with for my first responder course I'm making. I was like, right then I was like, I gotta get you and Tiffany together, because there's just like, it was just really neat to hear some of the stuff that you've talked about and hear Bobbie talk about it. But I want to go back to the ACEs test, or the ACEs quiz. If you can just repeat what that's about. I don't know if you have it in front of you, Bobbie. I do. If you want me, I won't read each one, but I want to put it in the notes in the bottom of this episode. You can click on a link that'll take you to a website that you can take the ACEs test. Really easy. Yes and no. You just read the question, yes and no questions, and then it gives you a score, questions. And then that score. Yeah. So if you want to
be right below, you guys can just click. Yeah.
I don't have
it on Instagram too.
I know generally what they are, so if you want to go over that, but like,
let's do it.
I know my score was a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
That's bad.
Well,
yeah.
Okay. Right. So here, I'll just do a high level. I'm not going to read word for word.
Right.
It describes it goes a little bit deeper into the description on the question, but basically, did a parent or another adult in the household ever swear at you, insult you, put you down, humiliate you. And that's like it's a often or very often is the answers on all these. And that's a yes or no. The second one is push or grab or slap someone, an adult in the household. So that's an adult in the household, could be an older brother or sister too. You know what I mean? So it's not just parents or it's grandparents. A lot of times we're finding out that grandparents are doing stuff just as bad, as a parent. 3 is touch or fondle, at least 5 years older, ever at least 5 years or older ever touch. So once again, siblings that could be doing this. And of course, remember, this is before your 18th birthday. You have to answer these questions with that thought in mind. Then the fourth question is, did you often feel that no one in your family loved you or that you weren't important? So once again, it's not just about like, oh, something actually happened to me, but hey, wait a second. Did I feel not important? Did I feel that I wasn't special? So that's part of this ACEs score. The fifth question, were you ever didn't have enough to eat? Were you one of those people that you were always hungry? So it goes away from the physical and mental abuse stuff and sexual abuse stuff to other things that could be traumatic to a young child, separated or divorced. Yeah, family nurturing. Number 6 is, were your parents ever separated or divorced? I had to answer yes on that. My parents separated. Now they fixed it, but they were separated at one point in time. So I had to say yes to that. Parent or caregiver often pushed. So now what did you see? Did you see a parent get pushed or abused or mentally abused or psychologically abused? So once again, I mean, it's a pretty neat little test. I mean, it's a little scary when you first take it because you're like, oh gosh, what's the score going to say? Like, what am I need to do? But now we're like number 8. Did you ever live with anybody with a drinking problem or alcoholic or use street drugs? My parents didn't do it, but I lived with a sibling, like Tiffany said earlier. I watched her overdose when I was 10 years old. I watched it happen. I was there at the house when her friends drug her in the house and were pumping on her chest, trying to wake her up. I don't know if she was in cardiac arrest or anything like that. She survived. She's still alive today, but it's one of those things where, yes, I was in a household that had these things happening. Not a parent.
And you were
10? A sibling. I was 10.
Yeah,
she was 18.
10.
No, yeah, I was 10. She was, she was. No, I was younger than that. No, I was younger. Shit. I was younger than that because we were in Westerville, Tiffany. We moved in Westerville in 78, so I was 6, and she was still in high school, and she's 10 years older than me. So she was 17 or 18, and so I was 7 or 8.
Kenny was just talking about that.
7 or 8.
I'm friends with his family. Obviously, I already told you that, Bobbie, for everyone watching. And I was just speaking to his brother about that issue and about how old you were. And I remember him saying you were 6. That is really interesting. We just were talking about it.
That's so weird. I've always thought I was 10, but I was much younger than that.
So you were still in that programming stage too in life.
Yeah.
You had to be younger for all of it, Kyle. Because even when Kenny left, you watched a sibling never come back. You watched someone overdose. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. I want to say this for the audience, and we know, but I want the audience to know, when you get your ACEs number, what is this test measuring about you? Let's explain what that ACEs is and what it's measuring and what it's telling us about ourselves.
Right. Bobbie, you want to try that one?
Okay. It's just basically raising your awareness to areas that you may be affected that you weren't thinking of. It encourages you to maybe seek help in whatever areas would help you process some of those traumas like you were talking about.
Okay, so let's talk about what that ACEs score means, how it affects you, and when you get it, what you should be doing with that. What does it make you understand about yourself?
Yeah, you'll get a number. You'll be a 0 to 10, right? And Bobbie said she was a 9. I'm a 4, I believe. I don't know what, Tiffany, you took it.
I need to take it. There was a couple questions you asked, but I got to take it again. But I definitely think I'm at least a 4 or 5. Yeah. I mean, my test
So
said 4,
Bobbie,
but then there was a question I think I answered wrong. It triggered a memory that I remember.
well, I did that same thing. The next time I went back, I actually called Bobbie up. I'm like, hey, in prison, that's like a number. That's like, was there ever a family member incarcerated? And I said no to that one. But then we realized that my brother went to the Buckeye Boys Ranch, which was like a little miniature version of juvie, if you will, like voluntary juvie. And she's like, yeah, I think he was not in your home. He was put in someone else's care that was not a loved one and not a family member. So yes, he was incarcerated.
And wasn't the question about a parent though?
No.
Let
me see. No, I think it said anybody where it's number 9.
In your household.
No, it's number 10. It's number 10. Okay. It says, did a household member go to prison?
Okay, member.
Okay.
I just took it the last couple of days. That's the only reason I remember. Yeah.
But that's why it's household member. So when I reread that, it wasn't what's that?
We were just talking about what the numbers mean, and I want to go into that level of addiction. Addiction is really important.
When it comes to the numbers, right? When it comes to the numbers, if you are a 0, you have very low likelihood of some of these major things like alcoholism, depression, work problems, financial problems, chances of heart disease, chances of a stroke. Those are very low percentages compared to over 4 and above. It basically up to 4. You like when it comes to ACEs score of 4, like alcoholism, you're 11% more chance of becoming an alcoholic. A chronic depression, you're 42% in women, 30% in men. If you're 4, if you're over 4, so 5 and more, you're a triple chance of having chronic depression. If you're over 4 on alcoholism, it's 4-fold increase of chance of becoming an alcoholic. Work problems is tripled compared to a 4, which is only like 15. So they take in consideration everybody, right? And then they realize that when you're over 4 on this ACEs score, everything is doubled to quadrupled, like double, tripled, or quadrupled chances of having these issues. A stroke, it's a double chance of having a stroke. Heart disease, you're double the chance of having a heart disease compared to the people that were 4. So these links will be in the description below. You can read. Don't just take the test. Read the description underneath the test, and then if any of those areas need to be addressed for you, go do it. I think that's you just said
addiction,
right?
In general. Basically, what I find really important is the fact that if you're over a certain number, your chance for not just alcoholism but drug addiction is even higher.
Yeah.
And there's different kinds of addiction. Like I'm addicted to productivity, and I'm addicted to cleaning. I don't have that is unhealthy actually, because it's too much of something. But because I dealt with so much addiction and abuse in my house, I never would abuse any kind of alcohol, or I've never smoked. I drink occasionally. Never done drugs. I just wouldn't take that chance. But I do also have addictions to behavioral addictions. I should say. So those are just different areas that it can affect your life based on how many areas that your traumas or that your experiences, I should say, what areas of your life that it can change. So because, mine, I've just always been so hyper focused on never becoming anything that I witnessed that I've always been in a state of stress and fight or flight. And I never have dealt with the traumas. I'd never done therapy until actually 3 months ago. I never even had a single talk session until about 3 months ago. I've just been raising my children and focused on staying strong. And that was so even though all the studying I've done, pardon me?
Yeah, I was going to say, wouldn't you say some of that studying you've done and the stuff you've read and learned, isn't that kind of some self-therapy though?
Yeah.
Tons and tons. Yeah. But actually going and doing any like EMDR therapy for, extended, which also when I had my SPECT scans done, it showed I had PTSD really bad. So one of the things they recommended also was EMDR. So I did that. But because of all my knowledge and all my training and all of my stuff, it was very, very effective, very fast. I loved it. And I also love walking the walk and not just talking the talk. So I like to do everything I preach about or talk about or recommend. I don't ever recommend something I don't do myself personally, which is the reason I went through the whole spec scan too and had the whole write up with my brain. Something I wanted to do and had to save up for. So it's just all that stuff. It's amazing. And actually doing the work and doing those therapies, it's changed my life in so many ways that you wouldn't recognize. So people say, oh, I'm fine. Well, that's been me for 50 years. I'm fine. I got through it. I'm a warrior. Yeah, I can get through it all. But there's so many little ways that your life changes. The way you see things, the way you react to things internally, the peace that you have, the joy that you can feel. You don't have to work so hard to replicate it or to create it for yourself. It just happens. You don't have that resistance. Resistance is a huge thing when we're battling inside, so to lose that resistance and be more open to life and to love and to things that are healthy and to help the healing and help everybody that we love or know, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's an honor to be able to do that. So,
well, we appreciate you coming on our show and sharing some of your story and doing all that and making sure that, I think the three of us, we have, and what the Elite Few is all about is taking our issues that we've had in our lives. And, especially with Tiffany, the reason why this show got started, which will eventually finally get out eventually, I think we're 29 days away or so to getting
let's make it
all
clear,
of the
Bobbie,
reason why
the show got started because Kyle didn't want to see me in this depressive mush. And he's like, we need you to be
look
functional.
at you, Kyle.
Let's give you something because I'm doing a podcast with you. This is what we're going to do. Literally right in the room he's in. He's like, this is what we're doing. And I said, okay.
Yep.
I'm gonna come
because I think that I felt that was going to be a very good. Yeah, I would think this was going to be a very good way of getting her through this bull crap that she's dealing with. But the thing about this is we are humans. We are imperfect, and our brain is way bigger than just what's in our skull. It is, so much. And there's a lot of stuff that affects our brain and affects our mood and affects our who we are. And, I know you mentioned something earlier, Bobbie, you mentioned EMDR. I just wanted to go back to that and let people know, if they never heard of that before, what it means and kind of what it does. But EMDR is eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing. And it's basically, I asked somebody one time that is a hypnotherapist, I asked them, wait a second, EMDR kind of felt like hypnotherapy when I did it. Like what I'm doing now with this hypnotherapy feels a little bit like what I did with EMDR. And he's like, oh, absolutely. It's 100% a form of hypnotherapy, but it's that right brain, left brain, rapid eye movement and allowing things to work to help reroute things in the brain. And that's what I did EMDR when I got past my issues with the carbon monoxide stuff. And it is, I can talk about it today. I couldn't talk about it before this, and I can discuss it. I can bring it up, and EMDR is found in first responders, that people, the first responders that trust it and want to try it. It is found to fix and completely cure post-traumatic stress. Right.
Can that work with veterans too?
Absolutely.
Yes,
100%.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and it makes you aware of, when you bring up something, it makes you aware of where you feel it in your body and how big it is.
Yep.
And it's just, you don't even have to be super descriptive on something. It's just a matter of, oh gosh, when I talk about this, I feel it in my heart, or I feel it in my throat, or I feel it in my head. And then you just pay attention to that feeling, and then you work through the processes. And it's until that you can talk about that without having a physical response anymore. So you're not having that same physical response that you're having, which also helps our genetic code, because we're no longer that heightened fight or flight mode. I had decades of stuff I was holding on to, and some pretty violent stuff. And it made me kind of gross to talk about some of that stuff. But it was so amazing to finally speak it and to let it out of me. It was really, really awesome. I loved it. It was very effective.
I have really enjoyed. Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tiff. No, go ahead, Tiff. Tiffy, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Okay. I've really enjoyed having you on here. I've been really hitting this whole topic for a while, and I feel that the trend that people are thinking the word trauma is trendy. It's not trendy. It's actually more of us have issues than we know, and there are many ways to address it. I mean, I feel like you should do all of them, but I mean, the reality is, do it, make a move forward, get up and do it, because it's either you're going to not be able to be the highest you can be, live on your highest timeline. You can't, and really all of these things, Bobbie, I'm sure you're going to agree, you just quantum leap to a new person. You were healing.
Absolutely. It's not even the same person anymore.
No, I mean,
living on a whole different level.
I can tell you from those six sessions of that hypnotherapy, I just flipped immediately. I
like stepping out of a fog.
Major difference. Yeah. Insane difference.
Okay, well,
Go ahead,
this has been a great hour. I mean, the thing is I know the first time I think I ever talked to Bobbie, we talked for a couple hours. I mean, and you and I can talk so deep and so long about some of this stuff, Tiffany, and that's because it's earth shattering. And the main thing I think we'll end it on this, and the main thing I want our listeners to know is that we have introduce you to some stuff that you've probably never heard of before. It's okay, because like Bobbie said earlier, this stuff wasn't in our textbooks, and it may not be something that you understand that was there, but there's true science behind it. There's doctors and clinics out there that deal with this stuff, that there is real help, not just a shrink. It's not going to a psychiatrist who's going to pump a bunch of drugs into you and shrink you. There are new ways to deal with this stuff. EMDR is a wonderful way. Hypnotherapy is a wonderful way. Understanding what your trauma could have been through taking the ACE test and at least being humble and saying, wait a second, let me take this ACE test. Let me see what it triggers. And then go, you know what? I want to be humble enough, because I deal with that on a deep level. I deal with that. Even if somebody has pushed stuff down their whole life, they deal with something that they've dealt with in the past on a deep level. And that's what I want you, the listeners, to not just blow this conversation off. You take the ACE test and you have a higher score. Find out, be humble, and go get the help. And it's not just about going to see a therapist, and the stigma is gone. I want to just destroy stigma of mental health and post trauma and childhood trauma. I mean, Bobbie and I spoke about that in my course creation. Like, that's our goal. That's like I know my purpose in life. I know my new purpose in life. I can have multiple purposes, by the way, in my life. One of my purposes in my life is to destroy the stigma that we have around what we think is, I should be tougher than that. Oh, I should, I do this for a living, so I should understand how to deal with this. No. Because there could have been something from when I was a kid that's messing me up today, and it's real. It's not voodoo, So with that being said, appreciate you, Bobbie, coming on. I know that when Tiffany and I get together, we get kind of talkative, and we have so much stuff we want to know, and you've answered a lot of questions. And for our listeners,
thank you for having me.
Just
remember, Bobbie is now one of the elite few. She's out there helping herself. She's pulled herself out of the gutter, and she wants to help others, and including her family members. So she is truly an elite few, the fabulous, extraordinary people in our world that make a difference, right? And don't forget to subscribe.
Below, take your test.
Yeah,
click on the link.
All that stuff will be in the link below.
That's right.
And list. Yep. If something we said today triggered you about yourself or about another person, if it's yourself, go take the test and do some of the links that are in there to help you get the help you need, or send us a message, write a message. We'll try to point you in the right direction. Yep. But if you know somebody, like, they need to hear this message because they're in denial or whatever, and they need to understand that it's science and it's not something that's a bad thing to admit to. Go ahead and share this podcast with them, whether it be on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, all the major podcast platforms we're on, and YouTube, of course. And that's all I have to say. Tiffany, go ahead and take us out, and we'll have a good night.
All right, everybody. Thank you again. I love it when you join us. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share. And if you haven't seen our past shows, please jump in. Join us on Instagram and Facebook. And stay fabulous. We will see you with us next time.